Well, I don't know if I'm necessarily free because the conviction still stands. But the bigger takeaway is, and I'm so gracious that you decided to do a follow-up, is we want Alabamians, we want the country to know that there's this report from the Department of Defense that talks about how the government is manufacturing convictions with regards to sexual assault cases to get convictions because they've had to do something to appease members of Congress because members of Congress, for example, Senator Gillibrand up in New York and a few others have been putting a lot of pressure on the military with regards to sexual assault misconduct. So this defense report from the Judicial Proceedings Panel that was produced last year highlights all of these illegal patterns and practices that are going on. So I think it's just fitting and definitely important for the common person to understand here's what's going on. And so, you know, if it took me to be wrongfully incarcerated, there was no probable cause, there was no, we even found out that there was perjury and all these other things. And so you don't know how many people have contacted me while I was in prison and said, we've read everything, we've seen the stories, how did this happen? And so now I can point back to this defense report that I'm sure you'll talk about that highlights from the investigation to the prosecution to the appeals, how the military has gone above and beyond to fix a lot of these court martials to get guilty verdicts, and so we need to be aware of that. Especially, we presented this to Congresswoman Martha Roby earlier this year when my mother went to D.C. and along with Save Our Heroes, who was also at the meeting with Congresswoman Roby, and she hasn't done anything about it. And so I think that's important for people to be aware of. You know, we've got elected officials who have this information, who has this knowledge, who has this substantiated DOD report, and nothing's being done about it. Okay, so the National Defense Authorization Act, I believe in fiscal year 2013, sanctioned a group of, so what they wanted to do was to basically do a health assessment on how the military is prosecuting and investigating sexual assault cases within the military. All right, so what they did, I think they got a panel of about 12 or 15 civilians from the Defense Department they got these civilians together and they went and visited 28 military installations around the world. So all from different services, Marines, Air Force, Army, Navy. And so what they did was from investigations to prosecution, if you look at the investigations, well, one, they determined that investigators are taught not to probe too deeply in accusations of sexual assault. They're told that if there's an accusation, treat it as though it did happen. If there's conflicting evidence with regards to what actually happened versus what the alleged victim said, to believe the alleged victim. What they're said is that there are a lot of attorneys that are military attorneys that before they're actual military attorneys, they're regular attorneys that are violating their state bar ethics by taking a lot of these cases forward with no probable cause. The report concludes also that the merits in the case are less important than the actual victim's decision to want to go forward. So even if there is no evidence that there was any sexual assault whatsoever, the military is feeling pressure to take these cases forward anyway. And so again, we presented all this information. Currently, right now, Save Our Heroes has petitioned Attorney General Jeff Sessions to conduct an investigation on the Department of Defense. And we're also hoping that President Trump takes a look at these unlawful patterns and practices that have developed, unfortunately, under the Obama administration.
This is something where you're trying to make sure this hasn't happened to another man or female or
Right.
other people. And
Right.
so talk to me a little bit about that, about how your time, you're not just getting out and saying like, okay, whatever. You're
Right.
getting out and you're saying, let's make a change.
Well, I joined the military. My father was in the military, so I've always had a duty to serve. I was a commander. I affected lives of parents would send their children to me, and I was responsible for them. And I took it seriously, and I took it to heart. So when this tragedy happened to me, there were several things that I learned about the military criminal justice system. You know, for example, on the in the federal court or the civilian court system, you have to have a unanimous decision to get a conviction. Well, not in the military; it's only 2/3 vote. There is no grand jury hearing. There's what they call an Article 32 hearing, where, unfortunately, with sexual assault cases, you don't even have to develop evidence. They're going to push everything forward for a court martial anyway. And so, for me, you know, I want to make sure that I'm leaving my country with children that are now coming to the service with a healthy service. And to me, I think it's a tragedy. And I served with a Navy SEAL who was incarcerated with me. His name was by the name of Keith Berry. And so for someone like a Navy SEAL to protect us from ISIS terrorists or protect us from a Somali pirate in the Indian Ocean, so for him to put his life on the line and for that illegal terrorist to have more protections and liberties in a federal court than that Navy SEAL or that Green Beret, that should give everybody pause. And especially now that we're coupled with these patterns and practices that are further taking away the due process rights for those who serve. We should have, it should go without question that those who serve, if called upon to be questioned for criminal misconduct, should definitely be the ones that should be afforded due process before anybody else. It makes no sense that an El Chapo who's going to be extradited to a federal court system is going to have a grand jury. He's going to have probable cause to go forward. If there's nothing to go forward, then that ends it. But unfortunately, it's not like that with the military, particularly with sexual assault cases. And this DOD report, which I want to say is probably just as big as the movie The Post with Tom Hanks, where they talked about how the Vietnam War had kind of hid a lot of these secrets from the country. This report is probably just as big as that Washington Post story from the 70s under the Nixon administration.
So you've also filed another complaint.
Yes.
So talk to me about that.
All right. So what I did was I kind of took the Dr. King approach during the 60s when there were civil rights issues going on with people of color. And so what Dr. King, basically, he went to the government first and said, look, we need help. And then so what he did was he then went to the international audience, and that was why he was later afforded the Nobel Peace Prize. So what I did was I filed a human rights complaint to the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, which is in D.C. They're under the Organization of American States. So what they currently are doing now is conducting an investigation on the Department of Defense to look at the issues that I brought up in my human rights complaint, which is coming from that substantiated Department of Defense Judicial Proceedings Panel report. So they're currently conducting an investigation. Matter of fact, they just sent me an email yesterday saying that the investigation is still ongoing, and that they hopefully will have some results within the next few months. So this thing has unfortunately blown up to the fact now that, for us to be the beacon of democracy for the whole world, and for now it's going to take an international agency to take a look at these unlawful patterns and practices because members of our government refuse to do anything about it. I think that's telling as well.
If someone who's watching this say, oh, I know someone who's had something similar, or
right.
I may have gone through that
right.
myself, what can they do?
Goodness, pray, number one. But I think I was always taught as a commander, the most important government official we have is a United States citizen. The number one thing is to be aware and to talk about it and to bring it forefront. Right now it's election time. And so right now we've got Congressman-elect Bobby Bright. We've got Congresswoman Martha Roby. And we've got an Alabamian who's now the former senator of Alabama. He's now the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions. These people are Alabama is centerfold to bring about change with a lot of this stuff, And right now, President Trump has just met with the North Korea leader. These are all issues. These are human rights issues. This is a human rights issue. Anytime someone is not given their due process rights, that's a human rights violation. And so, especially with the military, this isn't about who's kneeling and who's standing for a national anthem. I think we can all unite under a common ground in saying if this affects the United States military and we are the military for the world, we've got to get our stuff together. We've got to fix this stuff because we got to make sure it's safe for that future Marine, that future Navy SEAL, that future airman, that future soldier. We've got to make sure that they're protected when they're on the battlefield and off the battlefield if ever they become accused of something like this.
It's something that I do want us to touch on just because the Me Too movement is
right.
so big right now,
right.
and this is very much so
right.
in the
right.
same thing.
Right.
The thing I want to touch on is you're not saying that all those people who say, oh, I've been raped are lying. You're saying that there has been a push by
right.
the military
yes.
to kind of crack down on things, and they're sometimes cracking down on people where it's not true.
Right, exactly. Here's the deal. I think what first of all, I have daughters, you know, and I'm all for if someone has done something, you certainly should be given due process. I'm not all about victim shaming, but what I'm all about is the Constitution, and I think we should all be about the Constitution. And unfortunately, with the military, if there's an accusation, it goes from accusation to trial. There is no due process, and so I think these unlawful patterns and practices hurt the Me Too movement, because now you have those who don't like the Me Too movement are saying, see what we're telling, this is a witch hunt.
Yeah.
You know, and so we don't want this. We want due process. We want to eliminate these unlawful patterns and practices that take away the due process rights for members of the armed forces, because now it will strengthen the Me Too movement. And I think these unlawful patterns and practices hurt the Me Too movement, you know, and that's not what we want. You know, we want everyone to have due process. And I think that's what this should be about. The Constitution is what we're all about. The Constitution is what governs our great country, and the Constitution is the model that the world uses to govern their countries. And so that's what this is all about, due process, you know.
And I feel as though when you have women that take advantage of this situation, this is hurting the women that have truly been harmed, been raped. Because, you know, but when you have someone that know that they're lying and taking advantage of a situation, and we have gotten into that, the reason that she did this, and it has been proven, and the military is aware of this situation. And when they take advantage of it, and they know that this young lady was lying, and they did not do anything about it, now that really hurts me as being a woman. And that's why I have to defend my child. Because I know that she's lying. I knew that her mother stood behind this lie. And that really hurts, that the United States allowed this to happen. And it's proof that she was lying.
And so then, you know, you take that, and then you wonder, well, how did this happen? Well, then we've got substantiated proof how this happens, which is this Judicial Proceedings Panel report that substantiates how the military is going above and beyond in manufacturing these convictions to appease members of Congress. And so that's what this is about. This is awareness. And so I'm asking that anyone who sees this contact the Justice Department, contact President Trump, and say, end this. And ultimately, if that means that we take military court-martials away and put them in the Department of Justice to make sure that it's fair, because think about it, the situation that happened with Devin Kelly in Sutherland, Texas, where the young airman shot up the church, all right, if military proceedings are, if that court-martial was already in a federal court, the FBI would have already had access to the records. They would have to have been worried about the military transferring those records over to the FBI. You've already had it, and so that's a bigger issue, but I think ultimately that's where we need to go. Get these military tribunals, put them in a federal court, put them in the DOJ. The military is the only department that has its own judicial system. And clearly, the way the codes are written, the federal courts can process any court-martial charge anyway. So you're saving money, you're saving manpower from having a separate federal court system where the DOJ can already handle all of these things. But that is a bigger conversation. But ultimately, I think that's where we probably need to go to get rid of any unlawful command influence issues, and to make sure that, you know, justice is served. You know, again, an enemy, foreign or domestic, again, should not have more privileges in a federal proceeding than those who serve our country. And unfortunately, the way the military justice system currently is constructed, that's how it is. And a lot of Americans don't know that. Yeah. A lot of Americans don't know that.
You know, I have so many mothers that's calling me because their sons are still incarcerated. And it hurts me so bad to know that there were things that I did not understand and still do not understand. But it hurts me so bad to know that the military is so unfair. And that's the way I feel about it. I have no trust. You know, they are destroying our children. And it hurts me so bad.
I think we have a wonderful opportunity here, and my faith has got me through a lot of this, has got me through all of it. don't call me crazy, but I'm not angry at my ex. I'm not angry at the Air Force. I've forgiven all who has done everything to put me in this position here. So now it's a wonderful opportunity for us to fix this, improve our country, to make so that this doesn't happen to anybody else. You know what I'm saying? That's what it's all about. Forgiveness, service, and moving on so that our country isn't truly the best place in the world. We have our issues. We're not perfect. But damn it, there's still another place I want to be.
Yeah.
And I think we can fix this and make this right.
Talk to me about what's next for you. What do you plan on? What's next?
You know, I've always wanted to get into politics. The first thing is, got to clear my name, got to get the conviction overturned. Ultimately, I would like to meet with lawmakers in D.C., both the House and Senate Armed Forces and Judiciary Committees, and sit down with those subcommittees and draft legislation to, one, stop these unlawful patterns and practices, and two, potentially come up with some new legislation that will indeed move the UCMJ from the military tribunal process and put that into federal courts. I definitely think I have the experience, unfortunately, but being a commander, I know how, you know, there are some that probably don't want to have that power removed from them, but you still got the non-judicial punishment. You can still move people in and out of your service that have discipline problems. And if there's something that warrants something serious like trial, the Department of Justice is already there to take it on. So ultimately, I'm a servant, and I want to continue serving. I think I've pretty much run my course with the Air Force. I'm good. I'm happy. You know, get my conviction overturned and continue to serve in a servant capacity, whatever God sees fit for me to do.
Yeah. Is there anything else either one of y'all would like to add today?
Well, they told me that the military had no jurisdiction over the civilians. And I feel like they knew that this young lady lied. And that's what they would tell me. We have no jurisdiction over civilians.
Right.
And so if you can put someone in prison and still say you have no jurisdiction over the civilian, well, I agree with my son. It needs to be removed from the military.
Yeah. So again, the biggest thing is we want people to know about this report, to see this report, take a look at my human rights complaint. I can give it to you. Save Our Heroes also has published it online, and take a look at the findings. And right now there's currently an ongoing investigation from the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights that are conducting an investigation as we speak on my human rights complaint. And so
into the DOD.
Into the DOD, yes. So, and I can provide you that. I can provide you that email we just got yesterday. And where did you say it was published? A military watchdog group called Save Our Heroes. They published my human rights complaint online. So it's currently online, but it's also currently with the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights as well. They have it as well. So again, it's time for our elected officials to act. It's election time. There's a 6-week runoff between Bobby Bright and Martha Roby, and whoever the Democratic nominee is. Her name's slipped my mind. But I think this is a hot button issue that people need to be aware of. And definitely with Attorney General Sessions coming from Alabama and President Trump tied into Alabama, I think this is something that the state of Alabama can be on the forefront to change and make Alabama a great place that we all know that it is. So.
Okay. So, my plan.
Well, the report says, you know, I mean, both reports tell you about who the JPP is, who they are, the people who are on the chairman, and then in my report, in my complaint, I have the page number from the report. So when I talk about how there's no probable cause, I show you the page number from where, so maybe you can kind of, you know, see the report and kind of zoom in. It says these things. So again, to prove that I'm not making this stuff up, this isn't speculation. Yeah. This is coming from a DOD report.
Yeah, if y'all don't mind just saying that to me one more time.
Okay.
The last couple months has been
we'll
hectic.
Do. We'll do.
But,
we'll do.
A lot of stuff has probably gotten lost in my mailboxes. But yeah, if y'all don't mind just saying that to me one more time, and then I'm going to get to work on this tonight, and then it'll
Okay.
run tomorrow.
Okay.
Either 5 and 6, and then probably 10.
Okay. Okay. And just
And
let
then
us
it'll
know.
be on the website.
And then hopefully, you know, like I said, I know sometimes CNN, HLN, these folks pick it up. Hopefully, you know,
Yeah,
maybe
the person I was on the phone with whenever y'all pulled up was a station in Virginia.
Okay.
They called me. They saw a story I did on suicide yesterday, and
Okay.
they called. And so, yeah, other stations see it, and
Right.
they grab stuff up.
Right. Do you guys, when you guys normally do stories, do you guys normally officially push it up to the big news networks? and-
Yeah, so what we do is whenever we publish a story, we distribute it to, like, Nexstar owns WDHN.
Right.
And so Nexstar has 188 other stations.
Okay.
And then CNN is our affiliate.
Got it.
So we push everything up
Got it.
through that distribution, and they can click and pull
Right.
it. And sometimes I had someone call last week about a story I did in November.
Right.
So sometimes it does take a little
Right.
bit for it to get pushed up,
Right.
but whenever it gets picked up, it goes.
I think it'd be provocative if you maybe open it up saying something to the effect of a DOD report that proves that court martials are fixed to get convictions coming up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If you say something like that, I think that's gonna, and I think that's gonna be groundbreaking for you because no one's talking about this,
Yeah.
Casey. You know what I'm saying? I mean, this is the Department of Defense talking about what they're doing to fix court martials. I mean, that's insane, but that's what this report says. So I think if you say something to that effect, I think that'll get people to say, "Whoa, what are you talking about?"
Yeah, what's
You know?
going on?
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. And then I was just going to get some B-roll of you, like, walking around.
Okay.
And then, yeah.
All right, with me and my mom.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then any pictures or anything that y'all have, if you want to just send it to my email.
Okay.
And
We've got your email still. We've still got your email.
Yeah, it's
Oh.
still on.